Welcome to the Mage cards of Showdown in the Badlands. As a big note, one of the cards is missing and will be revealed at BlizzCon. It's the Highlander Mage card. Now, I don't necessarily think that that's a big impact not seeing this because I think that the Highlander Mage is unlikely to be good unless the Highlander card essentially says win the game. But like that would be ridiculous. Why would they ever print something like that? The reason why I don't think Highlander Mage will be successful, despite not seeing the literal Highlander payoff for Mage, is because you always have to think about what deck competes in that kind of archetype. And the Highlander Mage is likely some sort of value-oriented, long game, control-ish deck. And Mage has a deck like that right now. It's called Rainbow Mage, where you cast a bunch of different spell schools, and then you cast your Sif, have a bunch of spell damage, and then you kill your opponent in one turn. Now, I don't know, is the Highlander Mage deck going to be able to kill your opponent in one turn? Well, if it does, then maybe it'll actually be a deck, but seems pretty unlikely for like a one of card to be the, kill your opponent in one turn. That'd be kind of unfair. But Rainbow Mage is a good deck, and Heatwave goes into that deck. Heatwave is an excellent card. 2 mana fire spell, deal 2 damage to an enemy minion and its neighbors. Quick draw to all enemies instead. So even without the quick draw effect, this card's great. With the quick draw effect, the card's a little bit better, but honestly not that big a deal to not have the quick draw effect. 2 mana to deal 2 damage to up to 3 adjacent minions. Great. And that is about all that's important for Mage. Good review. We're done. Okay, so you wanted a little bit more. I am not actually trolling when I say that Heatwave is basically the only card that's important here. Let's take a look at the other stuff, though. So let's take a look at the 4 excavation cards. The package for excavation. 2 mana, freeze an enemy, excavate a treasure. That's obviously ludicrously overcosted, way too slow. And again, the big thing to remember is you have to think about the next best deck. Is the payoff of Mage of excavating the Azurite Hawk, the 4 mana 5/5, Valakrai, get a random Titan, it costs 1, good enough. So the requirements for that are you're going to have to excavate 4 times. That's pretty rough when you have cards that have the quality of excavation of cryo preservation, rather. Yeah, that's pretty rough. What's the other card that can excavate? You've got Blast Mage Minor. It's a 6 mana excavation card. Wow, 6 mana 4/4. We've seen this like right at the beginning. Valakrai, excavate a treasure. For each card in your hand, deal 1 damage to a random enemy. So yeah, it's a slow value deck, but why play that when you can just play Rainbow Mage, the Sif Mage, where your reward, instead of getting this Titan after 4 excavations, after playing 4 of these bad cards, instead of getting a Titan, you can just win the game by blasting your opponent to pieces instead. So maybe instead the payoffs are really good, right? Like Reliquary Researcher, 4 mana 3/5 Battlecry. If you've excavated twice, cast 2 random Mage Secrets. And here I gotta admit, yeah, that's a pretty good payoff. If excavation were anywhere near viable, then Reliquary Researcher would certainly be very, very good. This is admittedly a very good reason to excavate. And by the way, Mage does generate random spells, so you could randomly generate those excavation cards and then like have more excavation than the usual class, which makes the payoff easier to do. But still, despite that, I don't really think that's a thing. So, in short, it's just not good enough. It really isn't. What else do we have for Mage? We got Stargazing, 2 mana arcane spell, draw a different arcane spell. If you play it this turn, it casts twice. This does synergize with Light Show. Light Show is quite bad. Again, you have to think about the next best deck, and the best deck that's comparable is the Rainbow Mage. So Rainbow Mage is probably better than Light Show. So Stargazing, currently not useful, but if someday we get a big arcane spell, you're going to look at Stargazing. but not right now. Azurite Vein. It's a 3-mana secret. When the enemy plays a card on the turn that it when the enemy plays a card on the turn that it entered their hand, get a copy that costs 0. Yeah, your opponent might not play a big card. They might play a small card, and that sucks. Azurite Vein. No one's gonna play this in their deck. It'll be sometimes randomly generated. It'll sometimes be randomly cast. 4-mana 3/2 Overflow Surger. It's an elemental. Battlecry, summon a copy of this for each turn in a row you've played an elemental. What a joke! Wow, is that incredibly bad. First of all, there's not even an elemental mage. Second, I'm not even sure the card is that good if you were to summon 4 3/2s for 4 mana. You know, pretty susceptible to small AoE. Wow, is that bad. But more importantly, it's so off from like viable because there's no elemental mage. But again, someday there might be a bunch of elementals. I'm not entirely sure you even put this in the elemental deck when it shows up someday. Tathalon Bloodwatcher, a 4-mana 2/5 legendary. Cards that didn't start in your deck cost 4 less, but not less than 1. The not less than 1 is a good, make sure that you don't break something catch. But unfortunately, by adding this, make sure you don't break something. This card can't break anything, therefore it can't possibly be good. It's just my imagination is pretty good, but I can't imagine something that generates a bunch of different cards and then plays Tathalon to play a bunch of cards. Again, I mentioned the next best deck in this kind of genre, and the Rainbow Mage is the value control OTK mage. Like, why play a generation deck when you could just kill your opponent? So Tathalon, no good. And finally, we have Sunset Volley. It's a 10-mana fire spell. Wow. Deal 10 damage, randomly split among all enemies. Summon a random 10-cost minion. Super not worth 10 mana. It kind of reminds me of Sire Denathrius. This does not lifesteal. Yeah, it's I don't know what to say. Wow, it's 10 mana spells really need to do something fantastic. This does not. The only thing I can really say is it's possible that the person depicted in the art of this card is actually the Highlander card, and it's possible Sunset Volley is actually the Highlander payoff. That makes sense because the art of Sunset Volley, could be depicting the payoff card. So, yeah, maybe you play your Highlander payoff card, remains to be seen what it is, and then Sunset Volley might be like the OTK combo with that card. That's about all I can guess right now. So, if you watched through the rest after the cheeky quick end, you saw just how bad the rest of the mage cards were, and you could have saved yourself some time, but you didn't. Cool. So those are the mage cards. Coming up next are the Demon Hunter cards. Mage gets Heatwave. Heatwave's a good card. Everything else is a pretty bad card. Mystery Highlander card to be seen.